Welcome, everybody. Happy December. We haven't seen each other in person, I don't think, since December started. Happy snow day. Yes, if you're in and around the Philly area, we've got some nice flakes, which is lovely. Welcome to our first Prasada Talks of this month. And our theme this month is all about connect. And before we get into anything more, Alice, I just want to ask you, why was the theme connect chosen for December? What was your intention behind that?
Yes. So, as you guys probably know, we pick a theme for each month. And December usually includes a time of year where people are gathering for whatever particular celebration that they have. And over the years, I've developed a little motto that says, "Life is a group project." And oftentimes, we have not been given the skills about how to actually spend quality time together. One of my favorite books is called The Art of Gathering, and it's about people coming together. And so I wanted us to just spend a little bit more time on what it means for us to have deep connections and to spend time together, and how that even has changed after COVID and after us all being sort of down, cordoned off to our own homes. So that was why I picked it.
Love it. Love it. Thank you. And so our first Prasada Talks of the month is how strengths. So we're going to be diving a little more into the VIA character strengths, which are our core programming that we do. So we're going to talk about how strengths enhance our connections. But before we get into any of that, just in case we've never met, hello, I'm Meg Townsend, Director of Program Development and Whole Being Guide for Prasada. Alice, who are you?
I am Alice Dommert. I am the CEO and founder of Prasada, and I call myself on some days a whole being architect. I started my life as an architect, and now I really want to help people craft and design their own best and most authentic life.
Thank you. And let's just start by gathering, connecting to our body, connecting to this space we're sharing together, albeit virtual. We're still sharing space together. So I invite you to put down any screens, any devices that aren't just this one. Slide towards the edge of your seat. So hopefully your feet can be flat on the ground, and just let your eyes soften, maybe even close if that feels comfortable in this moment. Let's start with 3 breaths just to tune in, get grounded. So take a long, slow breath in through your nose and a long, slow breath out of your mouth. Just doing that twice more at your pace. After this last exhale, let your eyes slowly flutter open. Bring your attention back to this screen. So, Alice, when was the last time we're going to kind of dive through how strengths enhance our connection? So, I'm just curious, when's the last time that you had an enriching and connected experience with someone? What did that look like? What were you doing? What was happening? Who was there? And how are you relating?
Yeah. I will say that it was yesterday. We had one of our breathwork weekends last weekend at Pendle Hill. And so we came together yesterday, the facilitation team. And Marco is on our team. When we all came together, um, he started by just thanking each one of us and really recognizing, what we had brought to the retreat and how it had impacted the group, and just really was expressing his gratitude for being part of the team, um, and just noticing and recognizing and naming, like, we had a great experience. We all had a really great experience. And so oftentimes that connection, and this is one of the things that we heard over the weekend, we heard people say, "Thank you for seeing me." And that usually was in response to someone else noticing some particular quality or, and in most cases, a character strength about how someone held space or how someone was really brave and courageous to go into the cold dunk or how somebody had really persevered through trying out the infinity class. And so we already naturally start to do that. We start to notice when people stand out, when people are doing something. We notice when somebody's kind of really got that resilience in their place. So for me, and for most of us, it's when we feel like people are seeing us, they're recognizing a talent or skill, and they're actually acknowledging and expressing gratitude for that.
Mine was also yesterday. I had dinner with a friend, and I think the quality that was biggest in that we hadn't seen each other for a couple of weeks. Um, I think the biggest element in that was we both, and she's an amazing therapist, so she like embodies a lot of this work just naturally as who she is. But we both were very just actively listening to each other as we were checking in and kind of talking about the hard things that we've been navigating in the past few weeks. And that just, I felt so connected at the end with her of just like, oh, it's just nice to be in your presence and be listened to and heard. And yeah, it's a good it's a good moment of connection in the midst of a very busy restaurant. It was like we were in a little bubble, right? Because we
Yeah,
were really focused and present with each other.
yeah. It's interesting to think about and also how does it feel when we're connected
Hmm.
versus how does it feel when we're disconnected?
Yeah. And that's what I wanted to kind of talk about because it's always nice to kind of acknowledge like we're talking about connection, but what gets in the way of our ability to connect with people and what does that feel like? What are some of the blocks that we have? And I had a couple different thoughts and I'm curious to yours as well, but some thoughts that popped up when I just posed this to myself yesterday was distraction, right? We live in a very like just distracted culture and there's all these, notifications and devices calling our attention and phone calls and doorbells and people not stopping by our office to ask for things and lots of distractions. So that's one. Another one I was thinking of was just social anxiety as well. Like if a person experiences that, like it might be harder for them to reach out or connect. And I was thinking that working with the strengths might be a tool for one to help because you can kind of again make it about somebody else, noticing them. Um, I want to kind of dive deeper into that, but social anxiety is definitely a big thing that a lot of people struggle with. I even notice myself, depending on how my internal landscape is and sort of who I'm around, like that can be a barrier for me sometimes. And then just like stress in general, right, can kind of shut us down and not have us being expanding and connecting with others. And then another one I thought it was just like the proximity that you are to someone. And I know you can have a deep connection on Zoom or something, but the proximity and or the frequency of contacting them or being in touch with them. For myself, I notice sometimes certain relationships, like I'll get a little resentful if I haven't heard from them. And then I have to be like, okay, this isn't like them. I'll make us up some story and be like, oh, they hate me or blah, blah, blah. And then I reach out, right? I kind of get over myself and I reach out and they're struggling too. And that's almost an entry point to connection. But in my experience, that also can be a barrier at times if I'm not aware of my barriers to connection. And yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
what comes up for you with that question?
yeah, I definitely think that so one of my favorite podcasters, Glennon Doyle and sister and Abby, were interviewing Priya Parker this morning, like on one of the recent podcasts. So I was listening to it this morning, and she was talking about once COVID happened, we were forced because a lot of times we are being together, and a lot of times we think about connection as like, okay, I'm physically like I'm in the same proximity as you. And she was really talking about how so many of those things that we were doing, we were just on autopilot. They were habits and patterns that have started long ago, especially around the holidays. And now we really get to think about, like, is it desire? Like, do we really want to be with each other? And if we do have that desire, like, what is it? Is it that you knew that your friend really shares some deep stories, so you wanted to spend time with her? Or was it just that it's the family holiday party that you really feel like you have to go to? So, when we come together and we have that connection, what are the things that we're doing? She also talks a lot about, and I noticed that I really don't like conferences. I like learning and I like people, but I really, really love retreats. And so one of the things she talks about is, like, a lot of times at conferences, people are kind of there and they're got their name tag and their company, and and it's all about, like, well, who are you and where are you from and what do you do? And it's a lot of, like, kind of like surface level. And then, oh, well, did you see this talk? Did you see that talk? Did you go to this party? Did you go to that party? Versus at the retreat, the intention of why people are gathering and all the little formalities that we do an introduction at the very beginning so everybody gets to know each other. We share things about what matters to us. We share something people didn't know about us. So that whole idea about, and it's the same thing like with social media. You can have a million friends, you can be putting yourself out there to be seen, you can even get a ton of likes. But does that actually feel, and you're connected, but do you actually have a feeling? Does that actually feel good? I mean, for me, yeah, it's fun for about a second and a half to see, oh, 5 people liked my picture about my whatever, whatever, and then it's over. There's no lingering, more thought process, more, um, a lot of times when we have a conversation with a friend, it has ripples. Or when we've deeply connected with people, we think about, oh wow, I really appreciate that. I want to get together with them again. I want to make sure that I get it on my calendar. Um, I've also noticed that in social environments, I am so much better if I have a job. Like, if I have a role in the thing, I will go up and talk to anyone in my role. Like, and I have no problems. I have no shyness. I have no hesitation. Hi, how are you doing? I'm welcoming you to this thing. Totally fine. But if sometimes if I'm the participant and I'm just there to be, that feels awkward to me. Like, to just, okay, what? So, and I know when my son was younger, in his classroom, whenever they had that awkward time where kids are just coming into the classroom and nobody knows where to sit or what to do, some of the strategies they used were that the teacher would always have, like, a pile of pencils so he could go to the pencil sharpener and sharpen the pencils, or check with every kid that they have a mat or something. So sometimes that social anxiety can be helped if we're participating in the experience in
Yeah.
some way and feeling like we've got some purpose for that, to actually break that icebreaker of just like, hey, did you get a handout? Everybody else got a handout or whatever. Because
Mhm.
as you said, that is really real. And sometimes it's those first, like, it's, I think about being a freshman in college, and the stories are always that you think you're the person who shouldn't have gotten accepted to the college, and why are you there, and you're going to fail out the first semester, and then you talk to 3 people and they all have the same exact fear, and then suddenly you all are best friends, by the end of the semester. So as you said, just sort of getting out of our heads, and that stress um, creates that I'm the only person struggling with this is so hard, no one can really help me and no one wants to hear it.
Yeah. You talking about college made me think of I was very lucky and it was super unique. So I was part of the honors program in my college, which meant we came a little bit early. And we actually, our whole first semester had this class. It was called self-awareness was the class.
Wow.
It's such a funny name for a class, but it was like community building, connection oriented. Sometimes they made us do like crazy rope courses and things to like challenge us, and we had to journal and do all sorts of things. I mean, the professor was amazing, and it was just a really beautiful thing because a lot of the people that you know, what I was in that are still my closest friends to this day because I don't think we trauma bonded from being like, swaying from a high telephone pole, but we, yeah, it was this really focused, let's connect this group of people. And I appreciated that. It's kind of like a retreat, but just over a whole thing. Okay. So we've acknowledged there's certain places that connections might be easier, or certain ways that we might. before we dive into, because I want to talk about just like more practical ideas of different scenarios, different layers of connection that we might encounter as we go through our day and our holiday season and all of that. But first, let's talk about the strengths. I know that we've talked about it before, but just so we have a framework of what tools that we're talking about, and just recommending for exploration for this uh, practice of connection, if you will. So, can you just tell us a little bit about the VIA strengths? Just a reminder of what they are, where they come from. What's your 2-minute elevator pitch of the
Uh,
strengths?
so a group of social scientists, including Marty Seligman, who's still at Penn, sort of known as the father of positive psychology, wanted to really look at, what are the qualities of people who are flourishing, who are thriving. And they really went around the world, and spent a couple of years asking, like, what are the qualities of a human being? What are the character strengths, the virtues of a person who is living a good life? And they use that particular term, living a good life. So they identify these particular list of character strengths, and they fall under particular virtues. And so, under those virtues, each one of the character strengths is a quality that a person could possess. So some of the top ones are love, hope, gratitude, perseverance, judgment is actually one of the interesting ones. Appreciation of beauty and excellence. And so some of them are pretty straightforward. Gratitude, you sort of get that one. Love, you sort of get that one. But these are all qualities, not a person's ability to execute a task, but really about who you are and what are the things that you naturally do that help you navigate challenges, help you stay resilient, and help you be inspired and feel good. So it's one of those, I love the win-wins. It's the things that when we do these things, we feel like life is worth living. And part of the idea is that, we do some a certain amount of recognition in the workplace, in recognition of each other, like thank you for emptying the dishwasher, or thank you for completing that project. And that is about something that you're doing. But the difference is really when we are actually appreciating someone and saying, wow, the way that you pulled together that playlist, and the way that you really showed people who were super uncomfortable about moving their bodies when we got to the intuitive movement at the retreat, and how
She's
you
talking
just,
about me.
yes, exactly. And and how, you were keeping an eye on the room, and you would sort of go over and dance over next to someone who was a little uncomfortable and make them smile and just have them sort of relax. Like, that was really, it was a really beautiful thing to see. And at the end, there were people who were just really into it. So I admire that. And though, those are some of your strengths, that fluidity, that hope, that being embodied. Embodiment is not one of the virtues, but I think they need to add it.
Jed, I agree with you. One of Alice's mission, me too, get us all more into our bodies and just notice the physical and mental connection.
Yeah.
I love where this has gone because as you were speaking too, I was remembering, and as we talk about these next two things, I want to think about strengths, how they enhance connections, both how we can use our strengths. Like when you were talking, I was just thinking one of my top strengths is bravery. Like I can harness that in those social anxiety moments. Like I know that's my strength. I can summon 30 seconds of courage to like break out of my shell and go talk to somebody. So it's how can we utilize our strengths? Then also, how can we have an awareness of them again to connect with others as well, to recognize and appreciate what their strengths are. So this can kind of like be a twofold exploration that just popped into my head.
Yeah. It's interesting because Priya Parker, who writes the Art of Gathering, she just talks so much about the difference between just like going to an event and being there with everybody else and just, having it be the typical thing versus all the things that she does, or a host or hostess would do at a party. And we've all been to that Thanksgiving dinner where somebody says, we're all going to go around the table and say something that we're really grateful for. And for some people, that's just, they will go on and on and on. And, they might strength spot every single person at the table. For other people, doing something like that, showing some kind of vulnerability or having that super like in the moment reflection is not comfortable. So this idea about, connection can come whenever we can be self-reflective and when we sort of take off the mask. We feel connected to other people whenever we see like, oh, we see that we all have some level of just humanity. Like the human experience is a struggle. And so some people will say, well, I'm really thankful this year that I decided to get into rehab for my drinking problem. And that's a very vulnerable statement to share that with a group of people who might or might not know that. And for other people, that's sort of a big thing if it was a family secret or something. But I think one of the practices that we can have is that when we do show our humanity, and I think people are getting more comfortable with this. When we say, I'm just having a really bad day right now, I'm really struggling with this conversation that I had with my daughter earlier today. I'm, you know, versus just being in a meeting and not sharing that there's a whole bunch of storm happening sort of below the surface. And oftentimes we're afraid that, like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing my job, or either I'm going to be judged. And oftentimes we are judged. So it's kind of a two-way thing. How can we be a little bit more vulnerable? But then how can we also not be having judgments about people and be a little bit more curious about like, hey, what's going on? Like, are you okay today? And those are the kinds of things that build connection when we can get sort of below a little bit more below the surface of saying like, hey, I care about you, or thank you for sharing. When somebody shares something really, really vulnerable, I've also been in those cases where somebody shares something really, really vulnerable in a group, and everybody's just, it feels so awkward, and nobody has the capacity to say like, wow, thank you for sharing that. Like that took a lot of courage to share that. So it's just sort of taking your own temperature about, for me, the relationship of vulnerability to connection. The more vulnerable I am, the higher the connection. If, sometimes our vulnerability can be met and not received. And so that's also the like, who do I feel safe sort of doing that with? And usually those are the people also that you have more potential for connection with, that sort of deeper connection.
As we move into the holidays, right? Hanukkah begins tonight. I do believe it's sundown. So happy Hanukkah if you celebrate. And there's more holidays coming throughout the month. As we get into these, right, a lot of people have some nervousness because there's so many opportunities to connect. So how are you going to navigate the holidays with this practice? And what would be some good like initial steps for people to take that might feel safe rather than like the big vulnerability if that doesn't feel quite right yet?
Yeah. Um, I remember, one of the coaches that I had along the way was just really helpful in this practice of, before you're going into any kind of a, where you're doing your own thing, you're driving your car to an event, you're flying somewhere, you're doing your own thing. When you arrive at the thing or the place, having taken the time to sort of check in with yourself. We're talking about connection with others, but also like, how am I doing? Is there anything I need? I always carry a couple of my favorite essential oils with me. And somebody this weekend said, how do these work? Do these work? And it was like, I know that there's particular oils that I can put on that are going to smell really good. And I'm going to take 3 deep breaths, and I know it's going to balance my system. Because having an intention of like, I'm arriving to this place and there are going to be people that I care about. And for me, because listening is not one of my natural skills, really sort of, if there's something that I need to get out, maybe just jot something down, or in my mind say, okay, this has been going on. I'm going to put that to the side so that I can show up and be an active listener. Because when you're an active listener, you can also ask the deeper questions. So somebody can be telling a story about something. And, most of the time when we share stories, the way that we show that we're interested is we ask a deeper question about that. Oh, well, what about that little detail? Like, Oh, you said you got a new puppy and the puppy was chewing and da 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 da. Well, what kind of dog did you get? So those are really the things for me. Have have a little toolbox of what it is that when you're not feeling so great, that you've got a little, whatever your tool is, 3 breaths, essential oil, little music. I've just gotten this little Apollo band thing, which is supposedly an electronic hug, and it vibrates at certain rates to sort of put you in different states of mind. I'm still testing it. Um, and then what's your intention going in? Who do you want to be in that environment? And then what is, how can you really be an active, engaged listener? What are the tools? What are the things that you do?
Well, I think what I'm going to start doing more of, because I think about it, but then if I get too busy, I don't always take the time to really like get grounded within myself, always depending on the situation. So thanks for saying that, because I think that's going to be a helpful tool, because then you operate out of a place of just more awareness and and who you are, right? Because then they get to connect with who you really are, not the stressed out, nervous, distracted you, right? They get to kind of have a peek into some of your qualities. Um, so yeah, that, and really just, it sounds so simple, but the one thing that I continue to do is just be aware of my breath when I'm around people, especially a lot of people. It's just stay conscious of it. Just notice as I'm breathing. That helps me stay grounded and helps me be a better listener as well, and really present. And that's what I think of, like the more present you are within yourself, people feel that. And that's like then you have this ability to take people in, right?
Yeah.
Really be with them and observe them, and then have the steadiness again to reflect back to them, you know, a deeper question. I love that. Or something that you want to admire about them or appreciate about them. Yeah. So that, I know I didn't really answer it, but
I really think about Linus, like is Linus, no, Linus is one of the pig pen
Big
from
Pet.
Charlie Brown. Like, Pigpen's got this little cloud of dirt around him, and we all have an, whatever you want to call it. Like, you can tell when you walk past someone on the street. It doesn't really matter what you call it, their aura, their energy, their whatever. Like, you can tell when you walk past a mad person on the street. And you can also tell when you walk past a person who just is feeling joy without having a conversation with them, without really making eye contact with them. Like, as humans, we have that natural ability to just do that. So when you are saying, and even it doesn't mean your life is going to be perfect at every moment, but you're saying, like, consciously, I'm going to put aside this thing that I've been worrying about. This is how I want to be in this space for these people and for myself. And you keep choosing that and practicing that. And as you said, using the breath to do that, like, that is a gift. That is already a positive connection, because as you said, people are drawn to that, and it feels good. So it's really a gift. It's a take care of yourself, and it also uh, ripples out for others.
Yeah. And I think a piece of like letting go of expectation of what this interaction is going to be is huge, because sometimes your needs just won't be met with this family member or that family member, or, you know, whoever, whatever. And so it's really just focusing on what's here and now. What are we working with? Who's this person in front of me? How can we connect in this moment? How can
Mm-hmm.
I do a little, I be conscious of it and not have any expectation of anything in return, and just keep trying, because that expectation can be a barrier as well, I think.
Yeah, and the expectation of also, like, well, I know Uncle Joe's gonna do this or do that. Like, you don't know what's happened to Uncle Joe this past year. Like, giving room for Uncle Joe to be different.
Yeah.
In the I Ching, they talk about imprisoning people, meaning like you're so sure of exactly how they are that you're not making space, and that you're sort of already coming to an attitude, and then Uncle Joe senses your attitude, so of course he's going to continue to behave like that, even though he might be trying out a new mode. He might be trying out a whole new um, way of being that he's grown into in the past year. So I think that's another, leaving that room for others.
Juicy. Mic drop. It's one. We could keep talking, but I think that's a beautiful ending, is just find opportunities to connect again, first with yourself and then explore. And I like also this bringing this idea of like playfulness and curiosity to things as well, especially if they're more stressful or feel heavier. It's like, how can I try this a different way? How can I, leveraging that strength? That is a strength, curiosity. It's one of the strengths, like leveraging that just to see how might it go this time.
Yeah, and try a dance party. I will say your playlists are your playlists are public, right?
I think,
On
yes, some of
Spotify?
them are, yes. And I want to start making more. It brings me such joy that you say that, because for the longest time, no one ever wanted me to be the DJ. I've worked really hard to like source and find music that more people like, because I just love a lot of melancholy music. And
Ah,
nobody ever wanted to hang out with me and have me DJ. So I've been really working hard of like dance and movement as that source. So yes, I'll put that in the follow-up email. It's just the link to Spotify to follow me, where you can just check out when I'm kitchen dance parties by yourself or
exactly.
others
Because your
too.
curiosity, and when people start moving and doing funny stuff when they're dancing, immediately people start connecting because it's just joyful. It's that child, bringing that child out in you. So yeah, I hope people will definitely try some dance parties.
Yes, that's the biggest way to actually build collective effervescence. One of the quickest ways that we connect as humans. So thanks for adding that, Alice. I think that's awesome. All right. Thank you all so much for your presence. So great to have you here. Thanks if you're watching after the fact, and look for ways to connect. So a couple things coming up next week. We've got another Prasada Talks Thursday, 12:30 to 1. Sarah Murray and I will be doing that. We're going to talk about 2024. So join us for that. We're going to talk about how we might craft and plan a new vision for 2024. And then Alice next Friday is going to be leading our workshop, our special workshop, 12:30 to 1 Eastern Standard Time, character strengths and relationships. So just diving a little deeper into what we've already started talking about today. Thanks, Alice, for being here. Thanks for your
Awesome.
brilliant wisdom as always. And until we all meet again, please be well. We look forward to crossing paths with you soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.